Thank you. Okay, my name is Gene Calcaterra. I live at 17024 Foulstone Mill Court and am one of the 3 trustees in the Stone Mill subdivision. I am speaking for all 12 Stone Mill residents and 6 residents on Center Avenue in the Old Town Park subdivision that adjoins the subject 5-acre proposed development on tonight's schedule. I would like to present the residents' concerns and requests in a bullet point manner if possible. My first point is I would like to make it clear to the P&Z committee, the mayor, and the city council members that we are not opposing the development of the site into single-family detached residential lots. What we are opposing is the lot density of the development and the P&Z's recommendation for approval of the 13-lot site plan as has been presented. The second point I would like to make, it has come to the attention of the residents of the adjoining property that the P&Z members, mayor, and council members have not yet seen any elevations, renderings, plans, or building materials to be used as it relates to the homes to be built on this site. If this is indeed the case, the residents feel that it is very important for the above group to at least see what the proposed homes are going to look like before moving forward and recommending any type of approvals. None of us have seen anything. I've talked to our council member and for the ward, and he has not seen anything. So we can only go by the assumption that they're not out there yet. But we think it's important that we at least see what they're going to build. Then my third point that I would like to make, I would like to reference the March 21st, 2016 P&Z Commission's recommendation and subsequent approval as it relates to the development characteristics and building standards required of Whalen Custom Homes for approval of Stone Mill subdivision. The Department of Planning included a text change to the master plan to allow Stone Mill subdivision to have an increased density of units to a maximum 1.75 units per acre, with a maximum 15,000 square foot lot size, having a minimum lot width of 100 feet unless on a cul-de-sac, creating 12 lots on 8.01 acres. The proposed Ashley Grove subdivision has a 2.60 unit per acre lot density with, on average, 9,864 square foot lots, having 82 foot fronts on 5 acres. Clearly, this far exceeds the 1.75 acre density, the standard mandated by the city of Wildwood for Stone Mill subdivision. The residents feel that no developer should ever receive preferential treatment over another, but rather should be held to the same standards and requirements imposed by the city on each and every development. My fourth point and final point, on October 9th, 2017, Mayor Bolin revealed his 2020 vision plan for the city of Wildwood. In section 4 of that plan, it states that among other things—
1 minute.
Okay, what? I'm sorry?
You have 1 minute.
Oh, smaller residual lots are inconsistent with the Wildwood image. The mayor stated in the June 7th, 2021 Zoom meeting that he wants the homes on this 5-acre site to be comparable to the 18 newer built surrounding homes in lot size, square footage, architecture, and value to the existing homes in the area. Mr. Mayor, we certainly hope you meant that and will follow through with the city council members. In summation, again, so we are clear, the surrounding residents are not opposing development of the site. What we are requesting is that the planning and zoning and the city council listen to all the adjoining residents do the right thing by approving a maximum of 8 lots in total while adhering to the city standards and requirements of 1.75 units per acre, creating 15,000 square foot lots with minimum
Time's up.
fronts, and having side entry garages that use required of Stone Mill and Old Town Park subdivision. We ask that the mayor and
Time's up.
council members please listen to their constituents rather than the
Sir,
developer
your 5 minutes are up.
and abide the standards and requirements already established for the neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Nancy Fisher, you're up next.
Hello, all. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead. State your name and address and then go ahead with your comments.
Sure. My name is Nancy Fisher, and I live with my husband, Dan, at 2066 Wild Horse Creek Road. We are 1 lot south of the Lisk aquaculture operation that will be discussed later this evening. I see a lot of new faces and a few familiar ones, but hopefully you all know the longstanding history of this noise issue that started in October of 2012. The last testing was done at the property in March or April of 2021 after the city was told and they verified that all of the old noise emitting motors that had been changed out for newer, hopefully quieter models. Unfortunately, we disagree with how the testing was undertaken at the time. Only 3 of the 6 new motors were tested. We had asked repeatedly leading up to as well as after the test that all 6 new motors be tested, not only one at a time, but with all 6 running together. This never occurred as the owner of the aquaculture operation told the city at the time of the testing that only half the motors were operational and fit to be tested. He had ample time leading up to the testing to ensure all were in operational order, and given that they were new motors, this did not seem like an unreasonable request. Since those tests and until December, there's been no noticeable noise on our property, for which we are very, very grateful. However, starting on December 2nd and lasting for a little over a week, the high-pitched constant squealing of the motors returned. It has since stopped, but obviously caused us a great deal of concern that something at the fish farm was still capable of producing the very disturbing sound that we were subjected to nonstop for over 8 years. While we understand in theory that Dr. Thunder believes 6 motors will make no more noise than 3, we strongly want the assurance of a full test, especially in light of the week in December, where once again the noise was very prevalent and disturbing. We are respectfully asking you tonight that you wait to progress on the issue of restoring the permitted uses at the property any further until all 6 of the motors have been tested and confirmed. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ron Petruska, you're up next. Go ahead and unmute yourself and then state your name and address.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Ron Petruska. My wife and I live at 1700 009 Fallstone Mill Court in Stone Mill. My lot is one of the 4 lots adjacent to the southern boundary of the proposed Ashley Grove development. So I feel like I'm very impacted by whatever decision is made on the proposed development. Although I've enjoyed having the open field behind my property for the last 4 years, I always figured that eventually the open lot would be developed. And I, as Gene said earlier, want to emphasize that I am not opposed to the lot being developed. However, I am very concerned with the current proposal and the lot sizes and the architectural and construction details of the homes that will be constructed literally feet from my lot boundary. I would ask that the Planning Commission consider the following as it relates to the single-family lot sizes that are on adjacent developments to the proposed site. To the south, the Stone Mill. 11 of the 12 sites vary in site from 19,000 square feet to 36,000 square feet, with the 12th site lot having the smallest size, 15,000 square feet. To the east of the proposed lot, which is on Center Avenue, the proposed Wellesley Park development will consist of 4 lots, each at 14,000 square feet per lot. To the north and to the northeast of the lot, the Old Town Park development on Center Avenue consists of 4 lots at 14,000 square feet each. Additional has a lot size of 14,000 square feet. To the west, there are no new construction, single-family homes are present. The West Ridge Office Center 2 project and a proposed townhome project are being considered, which would be located to the west of West Avenue. Therefore, every new single-family home constructed adjacent to the proposed development has a minimum lot size of 14,000 square feet, with many in Stone Mill that are considerably larger than that. The original proposal showed 12 new lots at 9,900 square feet each. I believe the current recommendation scaled that number down to 11. This would yield an average lot size of about 10,800 square feet each, which is still considerably smaller than all of the new single-family houses constructed in the adjacent developments. In order to have the lot sizes consistent with all the other new construction single-family units adjacent to the proposal, as Jean mentioned earlier, I asked the planning committee to consider having a maximum of 8 new homes built on the existing home sites. That would be then consistent with the sizes that are currently shown and on the new developments adjacent to the proposal. I believe it's also worth noting that the proposed development is actually farther away from the center of the town center than either the existing Old Town Park or the proposed Wesley Park developments. Additionally, I'd like to request that the planning committee require the same architectural and building requirements for the new construction single-family houses as Jean mentioned earlier, i.e. hardy board construction, side entry garages, etc. And finally, although it's been discussed before, the potable water pressure situation is a very real concern for all of us. Additionally, new houses will make the situation worse. The more new houses, the worse the risk would be for water pressure issues going forward. I'd like to thank you guys for your consideration and the time for me to relay this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. If there's anyone else attending, all right, Chris Crutcher, you're next.
Yes, my name's Christine Crutcher. I live at 17013 Fallstone Mill Road with my husband, Dan, and my property is one of the 4 lots that back to the new development, Ashley Park development that you're considering. I'd just like to echo my sentiments of Ron and Jean. The noise situation, the density of the lots, the water pressure. I would also ask that you consider that these lots just be 8 homes instead of the 12 that's being proposed. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other attendees who would, oh, Peter? Unmute yourself and then state your name and
Yeah,
address.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, Well, along with the other homeowners that abut that property, I'm the first on the list.
Sir, please state your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Peter Smith, and I live at 17001 Fallstone Mill Court. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you.
I'm just joining the other four folks who face that property, and I echo their sentiments. And I looked at the plan in removing that pond and having 12 units there, and again, we have not seen any architectural plans about the square footage of the homes and what they may or may not look like. I don't know who the contractor will be. Dan Stegman is a developer, but who's under him? I can tell you that on Main Street in Cadbury Lane, over across the way, have homes that just are not acceptable to that or measure up to what we have, and really deeply concerned about lowering our price point. Stegman mentioned that if you have a mix, that it actually is advantageous to the people who own more expensive homes. I'm not buying that. I think that was baloney, be that as it may. But those are my concerns, and along with the water pressure. I think we've come to a point where we're not mixing this plan, but we want to work with the commission in minimizing the input on our neighborhood development and making those homes consistent with what we have right now. I think that's in a nutshell. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Councilman Garitano?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, great, thank you. All right, members of the commission, first, again, I want to thank you for your service to our city. You give a lot of time to the work that you do, and it's greatly appreciated. I've been asked by the residents that live in that area to speak on their behalf tonight, and you've already heard from several of the residents. So out of respect for your time, I'm not going to repeat those items that have been detailed out specifically for you, but rather to reemphasize that there are a lot of residents that are very concerned about the issues that you've heard, specifically around the density and so forth. And I have a lot of sympathy for these residents because prior to my service on council back in 2013, I was in their shoes. I am in a neighborhood that is outside of the town center, but borders the town center. And we had the same kind of issue, a high density neighborhood that was being proposed next to us. However, I always say this is one of the greatest stories I ever get to tell, because it was the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council that heard us and encouraged the developer to work with the residents to find a compromise, something that would be a win-win for all, the residents, the developer, and the city of Wildwood. And ultimately, we did come to a conclusion. It was a great compromise. And so I have a lot of faith and hope in the process that this could also be accomplished here. As you've heard, the density is the primary concern here. And if you were to take a look at this area with the satellite, you could envision these large lots, and then surrounding them in the middle is a higher, denser subdivision. And it doesn't seem to fit right. When you've heard that the homes on Center Avenue and in the Stone Mill subdivision have larger lot sizes. So I implore you to please take that into consideration when you discuss this matter later this evening with the long agenda that you have. So that's important to hear these folks out and to please try to encourage some common ground, something that can make everyone feel good about what's being built in the neighborhood. next to their homes. And I encourage you to please put yourselves in their shoes and think about what your concerns would be if you had an issue that impacted your property right next to you. You would want the city of Wildwood to listen and try to do the same. So thanks again for your service, and I greatly appreciate the time that you've given me and our residents who have spoken here tonight.
Thank you for your comments. Rick Eisenman.
Mr. Chair, I've sent Mr. Eisman a number of prompts to be promoted to panelist. Mr. Eisman, I'm going to send it one more time if you'll just click the button that says promote to panelist or join as panelist. Looks like he's on his way.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there you go, sorry. My name is Rick Eisman. I live at 17004 Fallstone Mill Court in Stone Mill subdivision. I'm just going to take a quick second. I agree with everything that was already discussed. We're all concerned with what's going to end up over there. And one thing that I didn't hear yet so far is just the value of our homes. I just don't want to see our home value go down. We all have nice houses. We spend a lot of money, and I'm concerned if smaller houses and smaller lots are going to be built, that's going to affect our value. I'm not opposed to having houses there. I would like to see the same size lots and the standards that Stone Mill was held to. And I hope you guys consider that. And that's all I got.
Well, to all on the call, sorry to step in, but it appears that Mr. Beatty has joined on a different screen and because he was locked up on another. Here he is.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, my computer seems to be crashing or something, or I have low bandwidth. Did Mr. Eisenman speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Next speaker with their hand raised is Carrie Bush.
Okay, go ahead and bring them in, please.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go, state your name and address and then go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Carrie Bush. My wife and I live at 1740 Woods Bend Lane. And just a couple of comments on the proposed cell tower that is very close to our lot. Number one, just want to thank you all again for your service and everything you're doing for the city. We have a couple concerns based on what we've seen, the information that's posted on the website. We believe the height and location of the tower is going to have a significant negative impact on our property values. That's a concern. I guess I'm curious overall what the problem is they're trying to solve with this cell tower. I assume they're trying to solve some kind of reception problem. I have that service and don't seem to have any problem in the area, so I'm curious about that. Secondly, I guess the main question I have is what other structures have they assessed I looked at the permit and I believe that, they stated that they've assessed other structures. I've located multiple other structures within a quarter to a half a mile of that proposed location that appeared to be adequate for that type of antenna array that they are proposing. And so I would encourage them to consider using other structures before building a very tall 195-foot tower very close to a lot of subdivisions in Wildwood. Further, I would ask you to honor the setback requirements that they are asking to be waived for a tower of that size. I think a tower of that size have negative implications to the aesthetics of Wildwood, and would just ask you to please consider that as you consider using this tower. Those are the comments for tonight. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak tonight?
Mr. Chair, with your question, I have not seen any new hands raised for the attendees for tonight's meeting.
Okay, in that case, let's go on to the next item on the agenda. I'm sorry, my computer's still iffy, so any help would be appreciated from you, Travis.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vunish is going to read this into the record.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the first item tonight under old business letters of recommendation is PZ 27-21, Johan E. Sanchez, 2511 Hickory Manor Drive, Wildwood, Missouri, 63011, care of Nikki Rosario, SunPro Solar, 8124 Buckham Road, Caseyville, Illinois, 62232. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the R3 10,000 square foot resident district with a planned environment unit. Street address 2511 Hickory Manor Drive, locator number 23V421021, for the installation of roof mounted solar panels, which are to be placed on the rear of the dwelling, but due to the lot having double frontage, are to be situated as to be visible from the adjoining roadway, Taylor Road. The request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.140 R3 10,000 square foot resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, which establishes standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. This requested permit is required due to the panel's placement on the rear facing area of the roofs of the dwelling and would be visible from the adjoining roadway. This particular site is located in Ward 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Travis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, before the commission tonight is a draft letter of recommendation for the proposed solar energy system that was just described in what Mr. Vunich read into the record. The conditional use permit request was heard at a public hearing in October, November, and December of 2021. At the January 18, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission voted by a vote of 8-0 to support the requested conditional use permit with the set of associated conditions. The department just like to mention two key components of that action. The first of which is that one of the conditions was that there were landscaping requirements in the rear yard area to screen the view of the panels from Taylor Road, which was the need for the conditional use permit. And that is a condition of the approval. And the second of which is that the commission did see a correspondence from the Homeowners Association trustees stating that they do not oppose the solar panel. And with that, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the letter of recommendation reflects the commission's action from January 18, 2022, and is in the appropriate form to be forwarded to City Council for its review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mayor Boland?
First of all, Travis, I want to thank you for that very succinct and accurate summary. Excellent job. I would move to, consistent with the commission's prior action, to approve the solar panels as presented with the two conditions that were previously arrived upon.
All right, so we have a motion by Mayor Boland. Can I get a second? And speak up because I don't have everyone up at once.
I'll second.
All right, second by Councilman Brost. Any discussion? All right, in that case, Travis, roll call vote.
Commissioner Hofree,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. All right, next. All right, next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the second letter of recommendation tonight relates to PZ 26-21, Gedemeyer Town Center Boundary Request, Edward and Patricia Gedemeyer, 2655 Christie Avenue, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for an amendment to the town center boundary map of the city's master plan and comprehensive zoning plan to include one property totaling 1.69 acres that is located on the west side of Christie Avenue, south of the intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2655 Christie Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24W630054. The property is currently designated non-urban residential area under the conceptual land use categories of the city's master plan. This particular site is located in Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry?
I'll actually handle this one tonight if that is okay, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for your consideration a draft letter of recommendation on the matter that was just read into record. At the last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission voted 8-0 to not grant the requested amendment to the town center plan's boundary map, which would add this property to the Pond Historic District. The Department of Planning has prepared the draft letter that notes the concerns discussed at the last meeting, including the recent update of town center plan and how the effort did consider additions to the boundary of this special area of the city, but did not include the subject tract of land. The concern pertaining to lack of access and services, and also the lack of historical component associated with this location. The draft letter of recommendation is ready for consideration and final action tonight, and is formatted to be forwarded on to the City Council. I would note that a positive vote would be to approve the letter of recommendation, which would deny the request to amend the town center boundary map. If there are any questions, Mr. Vunich, Mr. Newberry, and I are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Mayor Boland?
So just for the benefit of not only the public, but the commission, given that we're kind of dealing with inverse negatives here on a vote to approve would be a vote to not do something. Melanie, would you please, or Joe or anyone else, please just one more time, and you may need to give a little history here, given that the record shows that there were favorable votes, A's, in the last, I guess that's my question. If you, or not question, but just my request, the I votes, the yes votes that were in done at the last meeting, the implication of that specifically as to this development, what does that do?
The I votes at the previous meeting were essentially to deny the approval of the amendment.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like, yeah, it's so essentially, and same with this particular vote, if you vote to approve this, it's to approve the letter of recommendation, which would essentially deny the change to the boundary of town center.
Okay, and by denying the change to the boundary of town center for the benefit of the public, that would do what with respect to the proposed development from the developer?
Well, there isn't a proposed development per se currently. It's just a change of zoning that's proposed with this.
Okay, size of lots and so forth, that's been discussed. What would it be?
Yes, just one second. I don't have that offhand. I would defer to Mr. Vunich if he is
Mr.
available for that
Mayor,
question.
in response to your question, the property owners had hoped to develop the 1+ acre site with 2 to 3 lots instead of what's allowed now, which is just a single lot of record. And so from the perspective of the commission, the thought is that the area is primarily large lots over 3 acres in size, and the inconsistency here would be noticeable.
Okay, so in essence, the answer is they wouldn't get to put as many homes as has been requested. Okay, given what we heard from the residents who live next to this, which to me has more weight than probably anyone else that would come to the podium, so to speak, on Zoom and talk one way or the other. What I heard them say is that they are not opposed to this. They're just looking for 2 things.
Mayor Boland.
I'm sorry, yes.
This is a different site than the ones the residents were speaking of earlier tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I didn't see anything else on the agenda that referred to that other one, but there must be one. So, all right, disregard, and we'll get, what item is that exactly?
Ashley Grove.
Ashley
Okay.
Grove is the one that they were speaking of earlier.
Okay, that's right. I'm sorry. I got it mixed up. All right, disregard.
It's a single lot
I'll speak that when
off
I get to that point.
Christie.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions on this matter? Commissioner Helfrey?
I will make a motion to approve the city's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Ward. Any further discussion? All right, in that case, roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
I approve the motion to deny.
Commissioner Boyles. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Commissioner Clayton,
Aye.
Commissioner Doppler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Gross,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, with your permission and the authorization of the city attorney, the department would just like to read the titles for the next 5 cases into the record and note that they are part of the agenda that was posted both here at City Hall and elsewhere.
I'm okay with that. If the attorney is. Mr. Young.
I have no objection, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And Mayor Boland. You're muted.
I was going to wait until Joe is done, but since we have John on the line, this is a legal question. I was going to recommend to the commission that we handle these 5 in tandem, in other words, in mass, given the common relationships and logic behind each one of them. So my question for the city attorney is, number 1, can we do that? And number 2, can it be a single vote, or do we need to have 5 separate votes?
These can be discussed as one individual item. In terms of the vote, if a motion is made to act on them all at the same time, that can be done, but any member has the right to divide the question.
Okay, thank you. So after the question is answered. Did you answer the first question, John, that was asked about just before mine relative to who, I can't recall who asked that at the moment, but oh, the reading of the bills just in title, is that okay as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so once they are read, then Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that I just indicated, but I'll wait until they are read to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Vernich?
Mr. Chair, the next item relate to the 5 cases involving the Special Circumstances Overlay District. They are known as PZ 10-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of the Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. The next is PZ 13-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of the Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. The next is PZ 14-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of the Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. The next is PZ 15-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of the Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. And then finally, PZ 17-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of the Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vernich. Mayor Bowen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at this point, per the discussion we just had with our city attorney, I would move without objection that these 5 be handled en masse as one item, thereby requiring one vote, given the commonality in logic and analysis by the city's Department of Planning that has been presented to the commission. Thank you.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. Any further discussion? In that case, roll call vote.
Oh, you don't need, you could just do a voice vote on that, but then the motion to approve or to deny would be a roll call vote.
Yeah, I was getting ahead of myself. Thank you.
That's all right.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Any further discussion on the overall motion?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, just to acknowledge the letter of recommendation is an appropriate form for the commission's final action tonight. The letter of recommendation reflects the vote that was taken on January 18th of this year. And all 5 properties would become subject to the Special Circumstances Overlay District as recommended tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Helfrey?
Just out of curiosity, in the minutes from last month, there were some things that we looked for. One of the things was the commission wanted to know which properties were currently on the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's National Priorities List. And we also wanted clarification on an inquiry regarding the groundwater monitoring wells referenced in the department's information report. So my question is, do we have any answers regarding those 2 items? Thank you.
Ms. Helfrey, I believe they actually are in the report, but I will provide them in a response to your question. 3 of the 5 properties are on the national priorities list that's maintained by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. 2 are the Bliss properties, and 1 is a corner of the Strecker Forest site. That corner has a creek that trends through it, and that was the mode of transportation for some of the dumped toxins and contaminants. In terms of the ground monitoring wells that were discussed that the United States Environmental Protection Agency would like to install, the Department of Public Works, the city administrator, and the Department of Planning had a conversation with the individual that's managing that program for the Environmental Protection Agency, and we are working on some options with them. And so it is still planned but we're hoping to find better locations for that testing to occur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vunish. And I also want to apologize to everyone for being late for the meeting tonight. I had a little computer issues. So thank you.
Understandable. Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's hear. Is there a motion? Mayor Bowen?
If no one else wants to do it, I would move that these 5 properties be subject to the overlay district as recommended by the department.
All right.
I will second.
Motion by Mayor Bowen, seconded by Commissioner Helfrey. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
No.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Bowen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
PZ 30-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. They request for the consideration of certain changes to Chapter 415 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Wildwood by enacting a new section 415.600, supplementary regulations for agricultural and aquacultural operations, which would thereby allow the restoration and authorization of any use permitted by right on any site therein having said type of activity in association with it, without affecting its non-conforming nature, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vernich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, at the January 18th, 2022 meeting of this body, the department presented a recommendation report regarding this particular matter. The recommendation report reflected over a year's worth of work done by the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council relative to the subject matter. The letter of recommendation before you tonight in draft form reflects the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission at said meeting. Therefore, with a vote tonight, a favorable vote, the matter would be forwarded to City Council for its consideration and action. If there are any questions or comments, Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I are available to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vernich. Mayor Bowen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, Joe. We've had comments relating to, the fact that not all of the motors were tested. Obviously, in any decision we make, we like to close loops and make sure that we have, with finality, exhausted any open ends. So what is your position on that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, it certainly was a disappointment back in the early part of summer when we had Acoustical Associates in town with the anticipation of having all 6 motors operational at the time of testing. 2 of the motors were clogged with some kind of weed debris and the other had a broken pipe. Dr. Thunder, who is the principal of Acoustical Associates, provided information indicating that from a mathematical standpoint, theoretically, that they could determine from 3 motors the sound of 6, because I guess sound is a quantity that's easy to manage. From the department's perspective, it would have been great to have all 6 of the motors running at the same time when the testing was completed. And I am confident that Dr. Thunder knows sound better than I, and that was what was presented to the council committee. And although the vote was not unanimous, there was a favorable vote out of committee. Thank you.
And if I may follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
And so, Joe, what would be the timing and cost of having a fully done study done with or completed with respect to all six?
The last study included some additional work on the corridor analysis of Route 100 and Route 109. So I'm thinking it would probably be in the range of about $2,000 to $2,500. The key component, Mr. Mayor, is gaining access back to the property from the property owner. He's made it clear that he's frustrated with our process, and I don't know how cooperative he might be.
And if this doesn't pass, what is the implication of that for the property owner?
The status quo stays unchanged. The permitted uses in the non-urban resident district cannot be authorized on the property until such time an application for a conditional use permit for aquaculture operations is submitted and acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, so I'll wait to hear. I see Commissioner Cohn has his hand raised, and our city administrator. I'd like to hear what they have to say on this, and then maybe I'll make a motion. So thank you.
Mr. Cross, you had your hand up first, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add to what Mr. Vunich just said with regards to the property owner. I can add a little more specificity to that. And that is that when first of all, we talked to, let's see, it's the sound study folks. It was about $1,500 that they mentioned to go out and to listen to the other motors. Mr. Vunich and I then had a phone conversation with the property owner, and the property owner was adamant and said, I have been cooperative to a fault. I have done all this. You have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, I will not let anyone on the property at this point. So he didn't allude to it. He was very specific and said, I'm done. You cannot come on my property anymore. He did allow at that time, Mr. Vunich and Mr. Newberry to come on site. They took pictures of the motors. They listened to the motors and so forth, and they observed with their own eyes. And I think they verified that they were all the same model number and so forth. So from that perspective, but again, only 3 of the 6 were running. But at this point, unless the property owner changes his mind, he said, you cannot come on my property. So if we're unable to get on the property and verify, and if that is the wish of this commission, and he says no, well then the city still has some leverage in terms of the things that the property owner is asking for. But I just want to clarify and make sure everybody knows very specifically, property owner did say, you cannot come on my property anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Commissioner Cohn?
Regarding the comment during the public session about the noise from the operation, it appeared to be that it was something that happened just like for a week or something of that nature. So would I be correct if we approve the recommendation to go forward, that if there is another instance where there is this sound intrusion or trespass, that would be a matter for code enforcement, and therefore could be mitigated in that fashion? That's my question.
Mr. Cohn, yes, certainly. Code enforcement would apply whether the permitted uses in the non-urban resident district are restored to the property or not. And so if there is a problem, we'll do our best to investigate the problem and try to resolve it within the bounds of the code.
All right, Commissioner Jackson?
Yes. There's set decibel levels, right, that you can't exceed already, correct, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a time frame like they can operate if they meet that standard between certain hours of the day, or can they run at any time? I'm going back to the Hidden Valley thing. That was a big hoorah. But so is there time parameters here?
Yes, sir. There are 2 time frames that are identified in the noise code. The first is daytime, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then nighttime, which is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And within those timeframes, the decibel level changes. During the daytime hours, it's 55 decibels. During the nighttime hours, it's 50 decibels.
And so this business operates 24 hours a day?
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year.
Okay, I don't think it'd be unreasonable to test all 6 of them personally, but my opinion.
Certainly, Mr. Jackson, that's what we hope to get, is the commission's opinion. Thank you.
Before I go to Councilman Brost, I'll follow up on that. If a nearby resident had the issue, would it be possible to test from her property?
In the past, the testing that's been referenced last summer was the 3rd test that had been conducted by the city on the property. One of those tests was actually conducted on an adjoining property at the boundary line. We could not get access onto the property, so we did what was considered appropriate and would provide us at least an idea. The way the noise code reads is that it's the amount of sound, not where it is generated, but at the property line. And so that's why we did it in that particular fashion. Thank you.
Yeah. Because in theory, he could make as much noise as he wanted on his property as long as it didn't travel past his property line.
In principle, that's how the code interprets it.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Brost?
Yeah, thanks. I guess what really bothers me about this is that this has been going on for so long, and that even after all this time, we have not been able to have a complete test. And I think to all parties, I think that's a fair request to have it all tested. If the property owner does not want to allow access, that's his right. So it doesn't get approved as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I won't vote in favor of it. I think it's a reasonable request that all pumps should be tested when they're all working. And I'm not a technician on this or a sound expert, but I think for all parties, after all the years and all the aggravation, everybody is entitled to this test. And it's not a significant amount of money. So, I mean, if you will not allow the test to occur, that's fine with me. It just does not get approved. It makes it easy as far as I'm concerned. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Boland?
I think that may have been a motion, and if it was, I'll second it.
Is that a motion, Councilman Brost?
Well, it was a long motion, but yeah, I think if that works for me, if it works for everybody else.
All right.
So I would interpret the motion to be that it doesn't move forward. It isn't approved until the testing of all 6 is done simultaneously.
Should this be maybe be more of a postponement until the test?
No, it's a motion to deny.
Okay. All right, so got a motion by Councilman Gross, a second by Mayor Boland. Ms. Ripito, did you raise your hand for? Okay. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
And so for clarification, Mr. Chair, a yes vote would be to support the denial. It's one of those inverted deals.
Correct.
Wait, I have a question on that. I'm sorry. The recommendation is that it's approved, correct? So if we say yes, we are supporting the denial of the approval. Is that right? Okay. All right, gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to proceed?
Go ahead. Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes 8-0. Next on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, the next item is one of 3 information reports. This particular one is PZ 9-20, New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, doing business as AT&T Wireless, 1025 Lenox Park Boulevard Northeast, 3rd floor, Atlanta, Georgia, 30319, care of Matt Schlittler, Network Real Estate LLC, 5055 State Route N, St. Charles, Missouri, 63304. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU non-urban resident district for a 12.3 acre tract of land, of which 2,869 square feet of the total area of this lot is to be utilized for a 195-foot tall monopole telecommunications purposes, along with associated equipment area, such being encumbered by a lease established for this purpose. This tract of land is generally located on the northwest side of Shepherd Road, west of the intersection with State Route 109, St. Louis County, locator number 22V 1402A2, street address 2001 Shepherd Road, St. Alban Row Catholic Parish. Proposed use, a 195-foot telecommunications tower and related equipment area. The tower is proposed to be a monopole type with exterior antenna arrays. This particular site is located in Ward 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Helfrey?
I work at St. Alban Row, so I am going to abstain from this vote. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Travis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight its information report with recommendation regarding the matter that was just read into the record. The department's presentation will begin with a brief background information, some brief background information regarding the regulation of these types of facilities within Wildwood. Starting around the time of the city's incorporation, the federal and state governments began adopting new laws to address the growing telecommunication industry. At that time, this activity led the city of Wildwood, along with 3 of its neighboring jurisdictions, to adopt a model telecommunication ordinance in order to comply with federal law, while also ensuring that this community was not negatively impacted by unrestricted placement of vertical obstructions in the form of telecommunication towers. More recently, after the implementation of these original regulations for 20 years, regulations were adopted by the federal government and the state of Missouri, which necessitated significant alterations to the city's regulations regarding these types of facilities, and those changes occurred in 2018. These changes that were recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately adopted by City Council were necessary, but did present certain limitations to the city's ability to manage its processes, its zoning processes relative to telecommunication facilities. Say all of this because it's important to note that this request, which requires a conditional use permit, is the first to be proposed and considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission, utilizing these new requirements in the city's Code of Ordinances, which is entitled Chapter 415.030, Regulations of Placement of Wireless Facilities and Wireless Support Structure. The proposed facility under consideration tonight is a 195-foot tall monopole galvanized steel tower, which is to be located within a lease area on the subject property that is 2,869 square feet in area. This area also accommodates for the placement of equipment on the ground and behind a screen, which would also have a landscape component associated with it. The placement of the lease area and the tower itself is to be located in close proximity to the existing Missouri American Water Company's 152-foot tall elevated water storage tank. The tower itself would accommodate the petitioner's equipment, along with 2 co-locating opportunities for other carriers, with also having enough ground area in the lease area to accommodate the needed equipment on the ground for a total of 3 carriers. The facility will be accessed by Shepherd Road and a permanent easement through the existing parking lot that serves the site's primary uses as an elementary school and church and accessory uses. In considering this request, the department, along with the Planning and Zoning Commission, must first consider its compliance with these relatively new established regulations that were previously mentioned. These regulations first identify 3 findings that must be considered in determination of the granting or denial of the conditional use permit for a new wireless support structure. In the department's information report being presented to the commission tonight, these findings are analyzed in detail. In summary, the department has determined that the subject proposal for a new wireless support structure is compliant with these regulations, and the approval of a conditional use permit for such is consistent with the necessary findings identified by the code when also considering the recommended conditions outlined in attachment B of the department's report. Secondly, as the commission is aware, conditional use permits are reviewed by the department and the Planning and Zoning Commission to ensure the proposal meets the 4 criteria that are set forth in the city's zoning ordinance, which are also outlined in the department's report. In reviewing this request, the department has also determined that this proposal, again, when taking into consideration the recommended conditions associated with a favorable recommendation, does meet the 4 necessary criteria. Before concluding its presentation, the department would like to highlight a few important components of its detailed analysis that was included in the information report, as well as certain recommended conditions associated with its favorable recommendation. First, the petitioner has proposed a plastic fencing material at 6 feet in height, accompanied by a landscape area to provide a screen of the ground equipment. The department's favorable recommendation is conditioned on a 10-foot masonry block wall being installed for the screening, similar to what the commission has seen in past presentations that is at the Marinus Retreat Center for that telecommunication facilities. Additionally, the landscape area is conditioned on being a variety of plantings to complement the screen wall. Currently, there is a single species of plantings shown by the petitioner. Next, the department is cognizant of the fact that the proposed height of the tower and the use of triangular arrays do have a visual impact compared to other approaches. However, the placement of the tower in proximity to the existing water tank structure and the requirement that all of the equipment must be painted the same gray color to match the tower will both minimize the visual impact to a certain degree. Additionally, the ability of the tower at this height to accommodate a total of 3 co-locations, the department believes does provide a tangible benefit to the community. And lastly, as the city has been aware for many years, and more recently highlighted by the circumstances caused by the pandemic, it is apparent that mobile telecommunication services do rise to the level of providing the basic needs of Wildwood residents and businesses, thereby promoting the public's general welfare, health, safety, and convenience. In conclusion, given the compliance with the requirements of Chapter 415.030 and the proposal meeting the 4 criteria required for the granting of the conditional use permit, the department is recommending approval of the requested conditional use permit upon the subject site with associated conditions as outlined in attachment B of its report. Mr. Chair, Mr. Cross, Mr. Young, and any member of the department are available for any questions. I'd also add that Mr. Schlichter, the petitioner's representative, is also available on the Zoom webinar. Perhaps Mr. Schlichter could address the speaker's questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if Mr. Slichter wants to address the items raised by the residents earlier, I'll wait until I hear that before I ask my question.
Okay. Mr. Schlichter? Do you have any response to the questions from the public comment session? Can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Now I can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address those questions. I think the first one that I heard, there was a few of them. There's a couple things that were addressed. I think the first note that I had was had to do with the aesthetics in the area, and I think in the staff report that was generated tonight, I don't know if the members of the board have had a chance to review that, but I think when working with the planning department, we came to the conclusion that the location next to the water tank was kind of a trying to minimally reduce the visual impact to the area with that the existing aesthetic, having it next to that adjacent water tank, and like Travis just indicated, having the pole and the necessary painted to match the color of the pole. Trying to do what we can to help visually minimize any kind of aesthetic impact to that immediate area was our attempt to try to do that. And so that was our attempt. And like I said, we worked with the planning department to come up with that location to address concerns. The concept of where we ended up in this location, I think we mentioned it on our previous meeting about the fact that there's existing equipment on that water tank right now for AT&T, and given the proposal to try to stay in that immediate area, we try to, we have a very limited area that we try to address, and part of what we try to do is stay as close as we can to that area. And we, as part of our submittal packet that you can see, we submit to the city that we try to address anything that's existing in that immediate area, given our searching, that we would try to attach to first as an option, versus trying to build a standalone structure. And unfortunately, when there's that in the immediate area like this that we're trying to cover, we have to resort to proposing a new structure like what we're doing tonight. And so that's why we're proposing the location that's adjacent to the water tank. The property values thing, that's kind of that's always an argument we get into. A lot of times we talk about, the bits and what this does to help, continue the service in the area for what we're trying to do now, but also in the future. So that's always there's always the pros and cons to look at in that respect, because a lot of times a lot of people see the benefits and what this is going to do for the long run to keep the service where what we're trying to do to help improve that for the area. And then I think hopefully that's I think I hadn't written down for those notes here. So I think that's what I had for the public comments there.
All right, thank you. The one other thing this may have been in the email we got before the meeting from another resident. I think it was from this email. There was concern about a strobe light at the top of it. Will this tower be lighted at the top?
No, this will not be lit. Structures that are under 200 feet typically don't have to be lit. We submit everything to FAA for, and then not just cell structures. Anything with the FAA that's over 200 feet has to be lit. But in this case, what we do, we submit everything just to be sure. But in this case, there will not have to be anything that's lit on this structure on a permanent basis, or just.
Thank you. I live within a few hundred feet of the 299-foot tower at Metro West. And so I was aware of that because I asked why it wasn't lit at one point, because of a neighbor of mine was concerned about that. So thank you. Mayor Bowen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have at least a couple of things on this. I guess my first question is, well, just an observation, and this is likely a subjective point, but I don't share the view that putting this tower next to another monstrous structure in our city makes either of them less noticeable. I actually believe it makes both of them more noticeable. That said, you mentioned, Mr. Schlichter, and I appreciate your explanations that, you know, you have apparently a relationship with Missouri American Water for placement of items on the tower. Why a new tower as opposed to placing something further on the top of the tower that you already have the relationship with the owner of?
It's a good question. Really it comes down to when you look at the water tank right now, the current environment for wireless and what the demand in the industry is being asked of it right now is a lot greater than when those sites were first introduced. And you also have to take into account that AT&T is not the only service provider that's on that water tank right now, and so there's a lot of people vying for space on, and we're talking about just this particular site in general, but also when you talk about just water tank sites as a feasible option for housing cell sites, sites actually have to get maintained on a semi-regular, not regular basis, but enough so that whenever they have to get sandblasted and maintained, those sites have to come down in order, all that equipment has to come off for that to have to get maintained.
So just to cut to the chase, is it theoretically possible that what you're trying to do with this tower could be achieved by something on the water tower that already exists? And secondly, has that discussion even occurred with Missouri American Water as to that possibility?
So for what we're trying to propose on for this particular permanent installation on the St. Elmo Monroe Parish, it would be really, in my opinion, be really hard pressed to put that on top of that water tank, given the
I'm
amount
asking
of radios
theoretically, is it
needed.
possible? That's my question.
In theory, the answer is I'm not sure, because the amount of weight that we're talking about putting in the air is much more significant than what I can envision on top of that water tank right now. And so, and that's just for AT&T. Keep in mind, right? There's many other providers and you know, tenants that are on top of that water tank. That's not just, we're not just talking about AT&T. And so when we take out what AT&T is trying to propose for this permanent new installation for, like we've been talking about, for future sustainability area, we feel like the best way to move forward, and it's supported by the staff report that has been made available to everybody here to review tonight, that the best solution to move forward with in this area to best serve its residents in Wildwood is this new permanent installation that's next to the water tank installation in a row.
Okay, I'll wait to see if anyone else has any comment before I make a motion.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, I'll just make a general commentary. This is going to be a repetitive thing before P&Z as broadband is taken deeper with access, essentially the fiber optics with the coming broadband. We're going to have other poles because the carriers, once they have access to fiber, they can put up more towers, monopoles, and making sure other carriers having some sort of regulations or codes or policy that it's multi-tenant monopoles. They'll all tell you, yeah, anyone can get on my pole and they can hang equipment, but the carriers in general don't play well together at all times. This is going to come up again, and I'm just kind of pointing this out to the city to be mindful of that and think about best practices that can service all the carriers where we don't have a lot of monopoles going up. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Mayor Bowen?
So as Travis pointed out, quite well in his recitation of this. There, are a number of new legal requirements and guidelines on this. And so I would move to postpone this to the next council meeting, to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, in that at that commission meeting, we have an executive session with our city attorney to discuss exactly what is and isn't permissible relative to this, because I can't speak obviously for every member of the commission, and I appreciate Travis's, letting us know in general some of these changes, but I would, for one, like to have a better understanding of what those changes are before we delve into this and make a decision definitively, given that once it is in place, it likely isn't coming down, and we have concerns that have been expressed by the neighboring residents. So I would move to postpone to the next commission meeting, and that we have an executive session with our city attorney relative to those items at that time. Thanks.
Second.
All right. So this is motion to postpone. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? All right. Abstention by Commissioner Helfrey. Thank you. So when will the executive session be? Before the meeting next month?
Mr. Chair, that would be the preference of the department. We'll try to coordinate that with Mr. Young, our city attorney.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
PZ 31-21 Wesley Park, care of Mike Whalen Custom Homes, 338 South Kirkwood Road, Kirkwood, Missouri 63122. The request for a change in zoning from the R1 1-acre residence district with a conditional use permit to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district for a 1.39 acre parcel of ground that is designated the neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan and located on the east side of Center Avenue at its intersection with Bordeaux Walkway. Street address 2630 Center Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24V510034. Proposed use, a total of 4 single-family dwellings on individual lots of record with required street improvements, Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm going to ask Mr. Newberry to maybe put up a aerial photograph or plan sheet on this.
All right, go right ahead.
I'll briefly just describe the site, and then we'll eliminate share screen so we can all see each other. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the site that is being proposed for rezoning tonight by Whalen Custom Homes is a 1.4 acre parcel of ground located on the east side of Center Avenue at Bordeaux Walkway. The site is identified by the aqua color that Mr. Newberry is highlighting. Mr. Whalen and his company has constructed a number of new homes in the vicinity of this particular site, 4 in Old Town Park, and then the 12 that were mentioned as part of Stone Mill subdivision. A major distinction between this particular site and the Stone Mill subdivision is that this site is located within the boundary of town center, whereas the Stone Mill subdivision was not. It is part of the suburban residential area under our master plan's conceptual land use categories map. The intent of Mr. Whalen is to construct 4 home sites on this particular property. Those home sites would front onto Center Avenue, but have side entry garages. And has been noted, they would be side entry garages in this particular case. In the report, the department has developed an analysis that supports the requested rezoning consistent with the town center requirements. particularly the regulating plan that identifies it as a neighborhood edge district, which is a true single-family detached district with individual lots for those detached dwellings. In the report, however, the department does identify 3 items of concern. Those items relate to Center Avenue, the stormwater management associated with the project, and then finally, the potable water issue that was identified at public hearing. Suffice to say that in this particular case, no development should proceed and none would be approved in the opinion of the department by the city unless Center Avenue improvements are completed along the frontage of this particular property. The city and the department has learned a valuable lesson in terms of waiting on improvements until certain circumstances are met. In this case, the department would argue, and as part of its information report and recommendation, supports requiring their improvements now, not later. In terms of stormwater management, the petitioner has also learned from Old Town Park that less impervious surface and more pervious surface is better and more suitable for this particular location. Therefore, as was noted at public hearing, Wayland Custom Homes, the petitioner intends to use pavers, amended soils, and other treatments to minimize the amount of stormwater runoff that flows off-site. The safety net here again is the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Finally, in terms of water pressure, a major issue, the department, along with the Director of Public Works, made contact with Missouri American Water Company. That contact identified certain steps in the process. This area does have a low pressure because of elevation. That elevation affects it, but is within the range that is acceptable according to Missouri American Water Company. However, they do have plans in the works and they are considering improvements in this area to address this particular matter. There is no timeline based upon the most recent email from Mr. Lenham, but certainly it is in the works. The department believes that any improvements required of Missouri American Water Company to ensure that the flow is not impacted in a negative way, both to any new dwellings or existing dwellings, is key to this recommendation. Also, the anticipation of Missouri American Water Company is to require improvements where necessary of the developer, and certainly the department in its report supports such. The department does support the rezoning, conditioned again on certain components of the report being met by the developer, in this case, Wayland Custom Homes. Those again are improvements to Center Avenue, better stormwater management than in previous situations. And then finally, the developer working closely with Missouri American Water Company to ensure that the water pressure in this area is stabilized, does not degrade, and that future improvements are planned and implemented as part of the development of these 4 lots. Acknowledging those items, the department is again recommending a favorable vote on the part of the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding this particular site, again, due to its proximity and inclusion in the town center area. After a motion and second, the department will be available for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. So just to clarify, the improvements to Center Avenue that you're requiring, that would be the full street, correct? Going all the way to Manchester?
It is not. The city is limited to the frontage of the property. And that frontage would be from the center line of the right-of-way area along the entire frontage. The others are considered off-site improvements and they cannot be a requirement of a rezoning. However, the department believes any improvements are good improvements and necessary and should be installed now and not wait.
Thank you. Commissioner Helfrey?
Thank you very much. First of all, in the presentation that you gave us, Joe, and I believe it's on page 21 of the packet that you gave us, the houses that I see do not look to be side entry garages. It looks that they're drawn as front entry garages. I absolutely could be wrong, but if they are front entry garages, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of room to make them side entry. That's one concern I have. Another concern I have is with the stormwater management. So let me see if I have my thoughts straight. When we talked about this last time, the people that lived in the homes behind these 4 lots were very concerned about water runoff into their yards because they said they've had problems in the past. And I know that we're requiring stormwater management, but I believe that you said that possibly the final person to take care of, to guard against that, was MSD. Did I hear that correctly?
Ms. Humphrey, I said that the MSD is the safety net. The city of Wildwood will implement what it believes is best practices in this regard. But no, at the end of the day, there is a minimum level, a high level, in the opinion of the department, from MSD, and that'll be our safety net.
So I would just want to guarantee that, we protect the people that live behind these lots, that we don't add to their problems. And the people the notice that we got from the water company about the potable water and the water pressure, one of the things they said was, did I read it right, that they were going to come out and look at it, but that it's not necessarily any improvements that need to be made wouldn't be made right now? Did I read that correctly?
Well, certainly in terms of the long-term improvements, they are not prepared to proceed forward in any short-term period of time. However, they did mention, I believe in their response from Mr. Lenham, that they will work with the developer to make sure any potential problem areas are addressed now, not later.
By the builder, correct?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it'll be upon the developer's responsibility, not the city or anyone else.
Okay, so then my final question for you would be, well, obviously to address the side entry sizes of the homes on these lots, but also my biggest concern is the way we would address the stormwater runoff as it affects the neighbors behind them. And so thank you very much.
Certainly the department recalls the neighbors speaking. In fact, the departments, both Public Works and Planning, were involved in the process to get that French drain installed behind the lots of those individuals in the Bordeaux Estates, Plat 1. So we know that there was a problem, and certainly we would not want to recreate it. And in fact, we want to ensure that there is no problem in that regard. And Ms. Humphrey, they are side entry. Mr. Whalen is on the screen, so he can certainly respond to that question as well.
Commissioner Ward, well, first, I guess, let me give Mr. Whalen a chance to respond to the side entry question.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, members of the commission, Mr. Mayor. These are going to be side entry garages, just like every other home we built over there. I'd just like to take a second to, to talk about the stormwater management. We've already submitted our preliminary plans to Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. If you're familiar with this property, it slopes and it actually sits a little bit below the houses behind it. So the water is running away. The cubic feet per second of stormwater runoff will be 0.4 of a cubic foot per second above what is there right now with our stormwater best management practices that we'll be implementing. So we are paying acute attention to that, as Mr. Bunich and I have been working on stormwater issues for the past 5 years together, trying to deal with, lots turning into lots with pools and pavilions and things of that nature. So this is something that we're trying to pay special attention to. So it has been addressed with MSD, and the proposal that's before you, it should only improve the stormwater situation for the residents of Bordeaux. So I can say that unequivocally. They are side entry garages. And then as far as the, just let me share some insight with Missouri American water and how they deal with these types of issues. So on I built 18 homes in this area over the last 4 or 5 years. Within one, I built Stone Mill, I built Old Town Park, I built another house on Center Avenue, and then 3 homes in Bordeaux. And so the way Missouri American Water will look towards the fire district for approval of the gallons per minute out of the nearest fire hydrant, and each fire district has its own requirements on fire flow, and that's what regulates the approval of water pressure. What most people don't realize, and I just need to speak to this, is that on every single new home that we build, we have a pressure reducing valve that comes off of the water main that keeps the pressure between 60 and 70 pounds per square inch PSI of flow from the meter into the house. And anything above that will destroy ice makers and dishwashers and other types of appliances. So, when we talk about water pressure, we need to talk in terms of fire flow, and no development would ever be approved without the fire marshal signing off on an acceptable flow of gallons per minute out of the nearest fire hydrant. So as far as individual homes are concerned, people pick faucets with pressure regulating cartridges in them. They pick there's all kinds of things that people perceive to be low water pressure, when really they actually have a valve on their house that keeps their water pressure low enough to the point where it doesn't hurt appliances and so on and so forth. So, your shower head, if you feel like you have low water pressure, change your shower head. So anyway, no development would be approved unless it met the requisite standards of Missouri American Water and the fire district. So that's the metric that we go by, is the gallons per minute out of the nearest fire hydrant. So I just want to say, just kind of think of it this way to kind of simplify it. You turn on your hose in your backyard without a nozzle on it, and the water flows out, and it flows out, at a certain amount of pressure. Then you put your thumb, or you put a nozzle on your hose, and you restrict that water flow that's coming out, and all of a sudden the pressure accelerates. So I would say, I'm not an engineer, but I've been building for 25 years. And, the things that can affect the water pressure inside a personal residence can be everything from the type of appliance that they have, the type of faucet that they use, where their pressure reducing valve is set. So Missouri American Water and Metro West will not approve any new construction if the requisite gallons per minute are not met. So please, whatever happens, they will require that we install infrastructure that will not have an adverse impact on the neighbors. That will be a requirement. We spend a lot of money on engineering, and then when we're done engineering it, they make us pay them a lot of money to re-engineer our engineering and put in what they require for the area. So please don't let that be a concern. Side entry garages for sure, and stormwater management has been acutely studied and should be an improvement to the area rather than something that would adversely impact the neighbors behind it. So that's all I'd like to say on those issues. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whalen. Commissioner Ward?
The person that spoke with us earlier today was very concerned about the number of homes and the lot sizes. Can you speak to that, or why is it, I'm sure, more cost effective to get more homes, but they were very concerned about keeping the integrity of the previously stated lot sizes?
As a point of order, I think that's the other subdivision close by.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's the property directly to the west with the pond on it in the picture. Yeah. Yeah, these lots match the lots behind the lots. These lots will match the lots directly to the east of this site.
Sorry.
Commissioner Cone? No worries.
Am I to understand that the questions about low water pressure, that some of the neighbors, or the concerns that the neighbors had about low water pressure, from what you said, it sounds like the problem of low water pressure is what restrictions they put within their own home, and not something that is out of what's available on the street. Is that correct? You're saying that they have low water pressure because of what they have done within their homes?
Well, Mr. Commissioner, there's a lot of things that go into it, and I don't want to bore you guys to death, but 3 years ago, if you went to Missouri American Water, you'd pay a water tap fee of $1,800, and your plumber would run a line out to the, you could choose what size water line you had from your house to the meter pit, what size line you would have from your meter pit out to the main. And then what size main you're connecting to. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but there was the Public Service Commission, from what I understand, sanctioned Missouri American Water and said, hey, we are going to hold you responsible from the water main, not just to the water meter like it used to be in years past, but we are going to hold you responsible, Missouri American Water, for the water connection from the main to the water meter into the home. Okay, because there's a lot of people in Missouri American Water's jurisdiction that really can't afford to maintain the connection between the pit and the meter pit and the connection to their house. So Missouri American Water changed the entire system. So now when we go to apply for a water connection, instead of it being $1,500, it's anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. And we have to go online and we have to fill out we have to tell Missouri American Water how many fixtures are going to be in the house and what fixtures and, any special conditions and this, that, and the other thing. And they approve the size of the water connection between the water main and the meter pit in the front yard, and between the meter pit and the front yard into the house. And that restriction level affects the velocity with which water goes into the house. On most new homes, you need a pressure reducing valve. Okay, so there's a lot of things that go into it. There could be sediment in a system. You could have low pressure fixtures. You could have all kinds of things. Your pressure valve can be off, and so there might be 10 or 15 things that could affect the water pressure coming into someone's house. The true metric to measure water pressure is gallons per minute at the fire hydrant, and that has been the metric that we have followed in residential development for the past 25 years. And it's different. It ranges between, requirements from anywhere from 500 to 1,500 gallons per minute, depending on what part of town. My brother is a St. Louis city fireman. There are places in St. Louis City where your gallons per minute out of a fire hydrant are 200. And here in the county, the bare minimum is 500, and the most strict is 1,500, and the average is about 1,000 gallons per minute. So I'd like to indicate it's my opinion that it's a much more complicated issue than people understand. There's a lot more to it than Missouri American Water's facilities. The size of the connection to the main, the size of the main in front of the house, where the pressure reducing valve is set inside the house, all have an impact on an individual home's water pressure. So it's not a one size fits all type of problem. There's all kinds of things that come into play. So I would just say, on behalf of this development and any other adjoining developments, it is impossible to get something approved by Missouri American Water or the fire district that is going to be detrimental to the flow of water in someone's house. There's a lot of things you could do to improve your water pressure in your house that have nothing.
Mr. Chairman.
We understand. I see your hand, Mayor Bowen. Commissioner Jackson was first.
I'm going to yield to Mayor Bowen.
I actually have a point of information, but we'll let Commissioner Jackson go first.
No, Mayor, I yield to you. You do a much better job being concise of what I'm probably going to say anyway. And I'm going to keep my hand raised just in case.
I think I want to hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
Okay. Joe, you said that Missouri American Water, I think, or whichever one it is, has got it planned for improvements, correct?
They are working on a long.
So they know there's an issue. Okay, so
yes,
yeah, you're adding 4 houses to something that there's already a known issue. You can't mathematically. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, that's for sure. But when you add 4 more that's drawing water, there's going to be a potential problem. So on number 1. Number 2, the storm drain, if that's not calculated correctly and we allow this to go through, who's ultimately responsible to take care of the houses down the hill? Is it going to be the city or is it going to be the builder? That's my other question.
Typically it's the builder, sir, because if we do our job correctly and the engineered plans follow the standards and guidelines, then there should not be an issue with stormwater runoff unless, and it's always the unless, there's just some crazy storm that you don't design for. And that happens occasionally.
Okay, the last thing I noticed on the stone mill, if I got that right, they're bigger, a little bigger houses, it looks like from the visual eye, and a little bit bigger yards. This looks to be smaller houses, very compact, getting 4 into a very small area too. So is that accurate? What's the square footage versus both? I mean, that weighs into my decision as well.
Well, in terms of lot size, the 4 that are being proposed are over 14,000 square feet. In terms of the houses, I believe at the public hearing, Mr. Whalen said they are very similar to both Stone Mill and Old Town Park. It's a successful formula that's been sold at these locations and been supported by the buying public. And so from that perspective, I think they are consistent. Again, the determination here isn't necessarily trying to create consistency. We always want to attempt that, but one site is in town center, this particular location, and one site is not, Stone Mill. So there are different rules and regulations that apply.
And that's where I was going. So we don't have an issue with the lot size, because I thought we had to have bigger lots in the town center, but I may have that wrong. And that's it. I'm yielding to Mayor Boland.
Yeah, no, it's just that one area of town center where we put that neighborhood edge transition that has the 2 lots per 3 acres. The rest of town center can go much denser than what's being proposed. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Commissioner Jackson, for your points. Before I make a motion, I have a question. Is it not the case that the water pressure issue is within the jurisdiction of Missouri American Water ultimately? Is that factually correct or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is factually correct.
Okay. And then actually I have two questions, sorry. My second question is, do we have anything in, I think the answer to this is no, but do we have anything in the file? I don't think we have it in the material presented to the commission. So do we have anything in the file relative to this proposal that is a certification from the party with jurisdiction over pressure of the water, which is Missouri American Water, that there will be no or material negative effect on the pressure? Do we have anything like that at this point?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Lenham, who is their district engineering manager, sent an email late today. For the most part, did say that they do not anticipate any issues, but it is a low pressure area already. And the department wants to be sure that whatever happens relative to this site or any site does not exacerbate the problem.
I'm not sure what his role / title is with Missouri American Water. An email is nice, but I think I'd like to have something further. So I'm going to make a motion to postpone to the next meeting of the commission until such time as we can have certification, and that is a word that I'm using literally, a certification from Missouri American Water that as the party with jurisdiction, and I appreciate very much Mr. Whalen's interest in our city and his developments. They're very nice, but I think ultimately we have to close the loop on this, and the party with jurisdiction is the Missouri American Water Company. So my motion is to postpone to the next meeting of the commission. Hopefully at that time we'll have to obtain a certification, and that's my motion, to obtain a certification from Missouri American Water Company that there will be no detrimental effect on any neighboring properties by virtue of this development as to water pressure or otherwise. That's my motion.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to postpone. I don't think we can take any more comments with that motion, correct?
Right, we have a second already.
Right, because postponements are not discussable or not discussable. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to postpone passes. Commissioner Cohn?
Is it possible to get that type of certification from the water company? Are we asking for something that doesn't exist?
Well, if
Mayor Bowen?
If I may, by certification, Commissioner Cohn, I'm just looking for something more than an email from someone. And Joe, what is the title of the person who gave you the email?
I believe he's the engineering manager for Missouri American Water Company.
Okay, and so is he the highest person? Well, I don't think we need to do the committee work at this point. He may be or not. I'm just looking for something more than an email that represents to all of us that what Mr. Whalen has mentioned to us tonight is the case or not. That's what I think we need here. With all due respect to Mr. Whalen, rather than relying on the proponent of this to tell us that. We need the person with jurisdiction, which is presumably independent, to give us a verifiable piece of evidence to show that, whether it's a certification or a letter, what have you, but I would prefer more than an email, and I would like to see it myself and read the words used. Thank you.
We'll do our best to get that for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Jackson?
On the next item, the Ash Grove, I mean, this is gonna be, we've heard so do we need to read that in the record before I make a motion to postpone for the city to go back and compromise?
Would it be all right if I think Mr. Whalen would like to say something. Would it be allowable to let him speak his piece?
Sure.
All right, Mr. Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate and respect your question, and I don't expect you to take my word for it. They don't do that. They don't provide you with certifications at all. There's a two-step process with Missouri American Water. First of all, until you have your MSD plan done, so this would be more of a public works issue. So we're at step one with zoning. Would you let these homes be built here, provided that everything else works out? That's where we are at this minute. And we have a lot of work to do. It has to work for MSD. It has to work for Missouri American Water. It has to work for the fire district. There's a list. There's probably a 30 or 40 item checklist that the city has that they require us to prove our point. You cannot ask Missouri American Water to certify something for you without a set of detailed engineering plans. They won't do it. They don't do it. It's difficult to get them to do it when you do have a set of plans, and they charge you thousands of dollars of fees just to look at it. So your safeguards are already in place with your own laws and with everything that's already on the books. So if I may, the test, the best way to get you what you're looking for, and I'd pay for this, I'd be happy to pay for this, would be to, we'll talk to the fire department and we'll ask them to do a flow test on the nearest hydrant to our development and see if it meets its requirements. And if that's the case, that's what Missouri American is going to defer to anyway. So their certification won't occur until we have an engineered detailed plan for our project, for the project that's coming up after ours. What you're asking for is just not a process that exists. And I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form. I totally appreciate what you're saying, but I would be happy to do a flow test on the nearest hydrant and ask the fire marshal to give us a preliminary approval for what we're doing, but that is the metric by which this will be tested. It's so much more complicated. And we've been, with all due respect, we've been working on this for 5 years to get Center Avenue done and to get that street finished and everything. And, I'm not in a rush and I don't want you guys to do anything you're not comfortable doing, but I don't want to see it delayed by 6 months because trying to pursue an answer that we just can't get. They won't do it. So the best we could do is, and I'll pay for it, is a flow test at the nearest hydrant to make sure we have adequate pressure for our development. If I'll spend that money just to, keep things moving forward. If it doesn't meet the requirements, then Missouri American Water will force us to improve the infrastructure to get us there. That's in their bylaws. So I'm just trying to avoid an unnecessary delay. That's all.
Okay. So first of all, if Missouri American Water will, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, if Missouri American Water will spend the money to update its infrastructure, then at a minimum, it would be willing, I would assume, to give us some sort of indication that the flow test that you're proposing would be workable. So in lieu of a certification, if there's no objection from the commission, if Missouri American Water wants to let us know that that kind of a flow test that you're willing to pay for or whatever will answer the problem, I'm fine with that. by use of the word certification, all I'm looking for is that someone with jurisdiction on the water pressure issue, which with all due respect, Mike, isn't the developer and it's not the city. It's Missouri American Water. And if we have a complaint by our residents, we have to be able to close the loop on this and explain why we did what we did. So however it works out and whatever we get, the commission can look at it and decide at its next meeting. It's only 30 days. It's not a lifetime. It's 30 days, but I think for both the city's benefit and your benefit, and frankly, Missouri American Waters, and certainly above all else, our residents' benefit, it's important that we do it that way because they are the ones who have, the jurisdiction over it. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just really quick, it would be the fire department. That is
and it would include the fire department. But that again is up to Missouri American Water. We don't know that. And as the developer, I appreciate that you know more than we do, but I want to hear Missouri American Water tell us that that's the case.
And they won't until they get a full set of engineered plans for the drawing or for the development. The fire department, however, will once we do a flow test. And so Missouri American Water at the end of the day is governed by the Public Service Commission. But Metro West Fire District, it is I would contend is the regulating authority on proper fire flows, proper water pressure for that area. Okay. So, and I have no problem with 30 days is not a big deal. I just want to make sure we're clear. The right entity to turn to is not Missouri American Water. It is the fire department, because Missouri American Water is going to base its decision on what the fire department says. They will not give up.
So Mike, when this comes back to the commission in 30 days, the commission will know, I am confident, regardless of where it comes from, but certainly it needs to involve Missouri American Water, the evidence that is there to support that the water pressure and other issues will be fine. So I think the motion's passed, and unless there's a reconsideration of it, it is what it is. But we're to your point, which I'm sure has relevance as to the fire department, if that's part of the analysis, I welcome that. Let's just see what it is, but we need more than we have now. That's my point. So.
All right. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. Vunich, we have citizens that are complaining on low water pressure, and this is a utility for the citizens of Wildwood. Can you ask Missouri American Water to find out what that problem is?
That's my intent, to basically explain the conversation that was held tonight and ask for the best thing they can give us to tell us, is there a problem? And if there is, what's causing the problem and how best to solve it?
Yeah, I think that would be the best thing to do, because there's obviously a known problem with the citizens in the area, and on behalf of them, civic duty, see what we can do.
As noted in the department's report, the potable water is a key element to sustaining life in your home. And if you have bad water pressure, then it's a problem. And we can't just keep pushing it down the road. And in the case of this particular project and the one that's scheduled to be discussed next, it's important that we get it right.
All right. Commissioner Halfrey, I've seen you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a question, and it's regarding the email that Mr. Lanham sent. And one of the things he said in his email was that the water pressure, it talks about the water pressure, and the way I read his email, they think that the water pressure, while it might not be optimum, is within acceptable standards. Is that the way, am I reading that right, Mr. Branch?
You are, and it's at the low range of acceptable standards.
Right. So I guess my question is, if they are telling us it's within the parameters that they think it's okay, and the residents are saying it's not, And, that's, how do we get them to address that? And I guess that's where there's a disconnect, right? There's, I don't know.
Well, there certainly is an issue. I truly believe that there is in this particular area. Certainly, I don't want to convolute the issue by necessarily holding up zonings that don't need to be held up. But I also believe it's imperative that the commission and the city make sure that we know before we vote if there is a side effect, a bad side effect, and that we address it as best we can.
Thank you.
Mayor Boland.
Thank you, and thanks to Commissioner Helfrey for making that known to everyone. And I would just say generally about this or anything else, Wildwood is not about the lowest standard of acceptable things.
All right. Shall we move on to the next item? You're muted, Joe.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, as Commissioner Jackson noted, in the department's recommendation report, we also talk about the potable water issue here for these proposed lots. So I would suggest we read it into the record, and if there is a motion to postpone, it'll dovetail with what was just described with Wesley Park.
I'm good with that. Travis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 28-21 Ashley Grove, Cypress Real Estate LLC, care of Daniel Stegman, 16100 Swingley Ridge Road, Suite 210, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district with a planned residential overlay district PRD for a 5-acre parcel of ground that is designated the neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan and located on the west side of Center Avenue, south of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2623 Center Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24V420032. Proposed use, a total of 12 new single-family dwellings, along with the retention of the existing residents, thereby totaling 13 units, all being on individual lots of record with street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas, Ward 8.
Thank you, Travis. Commissioner Jackson?
Motion to postpone with the recommendation that the city, Joe Bunich et al. Go back and work on a compromise on this before we go down this road, before it's before us.
Compromise in what regard?
Well, I think we heard a council member talk about a compromise before versus the density. And I mean, this is rehashed and hashed over again with the opening statements. I just think the city probably could go back and work on this a little bit before it comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, in my opinion. So offer the motion to postpone to give them time to do so.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Before I take a second on that, I want to point out that the subdivision directly south of Stone Mill has 9 homes backing up to 3 on Stone Mill. So this new development is less stints than that. But I just want to point that out, looking at the graphic from the last subdivision that is up. Commissioner Helfrey?
Would the water discussion also apply to this property, Mr. Vinich?
I would defer to Commissioner Jackson, the maker of the motion.
Okay, Mr. Jackson.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat the question?
Would the water discussion that we had with the previous item also apply to this property?
That I wouldn't know. I would probably think it would, but that's something for the city to discuss with American Water or Missouri MSD, whichever the governing body is.
All right. And Councilman Brost?
Yeah, I mean, I support the motion to postpone, but I guess I just want to understand the goal for the next meeting is, is the density as well as the water issue. It would be, what I'd like to hear.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, and my understanding that it was Ward 8 that did have that whole water issue. That Joe Garantano had stated that it was their whole ward that had some sort of issues with water pressure.
And, I mean, living in Ward 8, running cold water out of most of my faucets, it seems kind of low, but if I use any sort of warm water, it's fine. But yeah, and I will say that what Mr. Whalen had said about putting a new shower nozzle on your shower, we replaced one of ours after we moved in, and it made the world of difference. So I don't know. There's some subjectivity for sure. Mayor Bolin?
So I would suggest that we take subjectivity out of it and look at the comments that have been presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission in writing, in both that and the testimony tonight. We have a motion on the floor and a second to postpone, and to the extent those comments and questions entail the issue of the water pressure, it would be included in a report back to the commission at the next meeting.
Better said. I'll second that motion.
Well, there's already a motion, so we can't second.
I know, but that's better said.
So.
All right, motion to postpone. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oops.
Aye.
Sorry, Travis.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for interjecting. I didn't capture a second on that.
Councilmember Bros.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bros, sorry, who's also.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bolin.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstention by Commissioner Cohn. Motion passes. All right, next on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I believe that's it for tonight. Thank you.
All right. Mayor Bolin had reached out to me earlier today with a possible request, and so I will let him have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things, one of which I reached out to you today, I'll handle secondly, but the first one is if we could, as we do at council meetings, when we ask the speakers on Zoom their name and their ward or whatever, if we could ask them the item on the agenda as to which they're speaking, I think that would help those of us, particularly Commissioner Ward and myself, to know exactly which one they're talking about. So if we could just do that going forward, I would appreciate it. Is there any objection to that?
No.
All right, perfect. Then the item I reached out to Commissioner Beatty, would there be any objection on the part of the commission? Chair Beatty was okay with it, but we wouldn't want to do this if this was an issue for anyone else, of starting the commission meetings at 6 as opposed to 6:30. Everyone okay with that?
I'm fine with it.
Good here. Okay, and I see thumbs up. Any other? Commissioner Clayton, are you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, I saw you light up there. Okay, so that was my question. And if the chair and the department and everyone else is okay, then we can start at 6 and so forth, moving earlier. Thank you. That was it.
All right, so.
Thanks for all you do, each one of you. Appreciate it.
All right, next, the March meeting on March 7th will be at 6 o'clock then. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Ward. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate everyone being here tonight and have a good night.